I'm looking forward to getting into the music. I've already played it on the show and looking forward to getting into your career. So thank you for taking a minute out today.
Mm, my pleasure.
So
My pleasure.
before,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, absolutely. So before we get into the new album, I want to know
Mm,
this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was doing so many things to change so many facets of our reality.
Sure.
How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you create and live life today?
Oh gosh. That's actually a really, really loaded question, and I've got lots of answers, and I'm going to try to just sort of narrow the field a little bit,
Yeah,
so that I don't talk for, 40 minutes just about that because it's so long. But
yeah,
um, when the pandemic happened, it was mid-semester at Berkeley, because I'm full-time at Berkeley. So it was like March, I want to say it was March 13th, actually. I think I can remember the day,
yeah.
when everything kind of shut down, and there was all this craziness with my daughter was overseas with her boyfriend, and they were trying to get back before they closed the borders, and yada yada. It was a big, crazy, just getting things started. It was a crazy mess. But um, one of my colleagues had a really bad medical situation happen that, as far as we know, was unrelated to COVID. It happened right before the semester in January, and I ended up teaching his whole studio. So I was teaching, I was doing double duty. And at the time I was part-time. And he is too. So I was teaching two part-time loads, which kept me super busy. I mean, just like way more than I would have been. And even remotely, I was teaching basically, I was kind of all day, 4 days a week, which is really long schedule for a Berkeley schedule.
Yeah.
Um, so my time was really occupied, number one. Um, Number two, I wasn't commuting back and forth between here and Boston, so I was making significantly more money, and I was getting paid for two schedules worth. So actually, in a lot of ways, I am not one. I can't really complain so much about the pandemic in terms of how it affected me, because in truth, we were fine. And I mean, we went out of our way to help people, and we definitely, I mean, we put a lot of effort in um, to the community. But in terms of ourselves, that part of it was not it didn't really hurt us too badly. I mean, my mom did get COVID, but she got over it, thankfully. But honestly, the way it changed me the most was that in the way that I was teaching all of these, like, classes that had these 10-minute breaks, they all 50-minute sessions, right? So every hour, pretty much, almost every hour, I had a 10-minute break, and I would spend it practicing. And it, just because I didn't have time to get up and go anywhere, you know what I mean? It's 10 minutes, right? So I stay in my studio, and I started practicing, and it really actually changed the relationship that I have with my instrument a lot. Um, it changed the way that I practice. It made me better. It inspired me to be more creative because I was discovering new ways to improve. And so, from the creative standpoint, it was really sort of revolved around the instrument. I mean, my comfort level with the bass, primarily the bass guitar. I honestly got pretty lazy with the upright bass, and I've only kind of come back around to that in the last 2 years. But uh, yeah, so it inspired me to write more stuff and write different stuff and play different stuff, and so it artistically, was a it kind of ended up enhancing my what I would consider the content of my identity, I guess. So it ended up inspiring a lot of positives, in spite of the fact that it was a really, really difficult time. I still think that people are recovering. I still think that a lot of people don't even realize how traumatized they were over
Yeah.
that, because it was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. And uh, So yeah, so it's and things are kind of in a weird state of things now, and for different reasons, and it's really it's becoming a more and more well, it's continuing to be an interesting world to live in, that's for sure. So
Yeah, you hit that on the head. Absolutely. It almost feels like like COVID version 3.0 we're going through right now. I mean,
I know, yeah, I
the
know.
clownery that's happening, and I think that's the thing that's so beautiful about you musicians is that you're creating these landscapes and oases for people to go into to kind of escape from the insanity between live shows and recordings.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
The problem with that for me is that there's I really, as I've gotten older, I've become more and more determined to be ethical, and just in general, in everything. And but I know that, like, when I released the Part You Keep, well, not when I released it, but when the whole sort of for your consideration Grammy thing, started, and everybody was posting, videos, and it's making posts about their records, and please vote for this and that and the other. I I was candid, actually, when I posted it, in that I felt it was difficult for me not to feel a little bit like a fraud, because just with everything that's going on, for me to go, hey, look at me, you know what I mean? I just was like, but at the same time, I agree with what you said, that I feel like there's a certain tangible value to art, especially when things are in crazy, times. And I do think that there's a responsibility, maybe, or yeah, responsibility, or maybe it's just some people's role. I don't know, to continue to put stuff out, and to try to be artistic. And I do a lot of my best artistic work when I'm in a really bad emotional state, actually, which is kind of weird, but I just do. Um, but yeah, yes, right. It is. I do feel like hopefully we're giving people something to pay attention to that's a little bit of a relief, a little bit of an emotional breather, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. So talk to me about the parts you keep. Talk to me about the new album. What was kind of the vision, and what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Well, it's the most sincere, I guess, vulnerable record I've ever made, in the sense that I really didn't allow myself really any second guessing. I just trusted my ideas and trusted my artistic vision, as it came, and I really tried to make a distinction, at least in my own mind, between refinement and um, manufacturing. Like, I wanted to have ideas that were refined enough to sound complete, but not be like I've thought them to death, and you know what I mean. And now they're this, and yeah. So it was a little nerve wracking in that way to do it, but the idea behind the idea behind the record, it actually does sort of relate back to the experience that I went through during the COVID period, as I was learning different ways to sort of practice and get along with my instrument, and be creative in the moment. I was recalling things, that just thoughts and sensations and whatever, that I had experienced as a younger person, and I just sort of, there were a lot of moments where I thought, that's how I used to think of it when I was 14, and actually that was right. There was a lot that was wrong, but and so I started to kind of realize that, and I guess I knew this on some level, but I had never really put it into words for myself. But that this, as we grow as musicians and artists and we get better, theoretically better, whatever that means exactly, but that there are these sort of versions of ourselves that kind of emerge, and there's the for me, there were certain stages in my life, and in each of those versions has something to it that I discovered, in that time. And that stuff doesn't, just because I was young and maybe immature, definitely immature, it doesn't mean that those ideas should just be superseded with something that I learned when I was 30 or whatever. So I became more aware of sort of this very basic core identity that I had, that was in my mind made up of the parts that I kept. And in some cases these are parts that I kept that I have ignored, that I've now begun to pay attention to, and I feel like it's been a period of great growth for me, as a result. So I thought in the title is just is based on the title of a Tom Waits tune. It's not anything like the tune at all, but Tom Waits has a tune called "The Part You Throw Away," and I just that just came to me as an opposite, sort of whatever, sort of an anti-pun or whatever, and uh, so that's why I called the record that. And then I tried to program material and use musicians who represented who represented various different of these stages of my life. Um, some of the music was written when I was 20, and some of it was written 2 weeks before the session. And I used musicians like the young guitarist who's on the record, Amaury Cabral. Is a brilliant guitar player. He's from the Dominican Republic, and I met him at Berkeley. And he's young, up and comer. He's modern. He's a brilliant musician and all that. I think he's got a bright future, for sure. I wanted that represented, and that's also the generation that I'm very much involved with now because I'm teaching at Berkeley, right? And then of course Randy Brecker, who's at the complete other end of the spectrum, and is one of the. And I think I put it somehow in the liner notes. I put it like his name is like kind of etched into the bricks of the foundation of modern jazz. So I mean, it doesn't get any more foundational in terms of people who are alive today. You don't have too many folks from that era. You got him, and you've got Ron Carter, and you've got Herbie, and you've got I mean, but you know what I mean. We're talking about the giants, of jazz. So I wanted to represent all these different times, and I wanted to program music that was meaningful in some specific way. Uh, and so I just started thinking back through tunes that I had heard on records that I always just liked, and I thought, man, it would be really cool, to think of a way to do this or that or whatever. So a lot of it was based on that. Some of it, like the version of Giant Steps that I did, which is weird, but I think cool, was just born out of, like, I had arranged that tune before, and I thought, just what's the next sort of iteration of what I had done with it in the past, and that's just kind of where I ended up. But yeah, it's the record is intended. Everything on it is intentional. I really, like, every note of it, in my opinion, is there because it's supposed to be. you know that's what I just kind of believe in. I just am not. I'd probably be a better performer if I embraced BS more than I do. It's just how I am. I don't know. It's just how I am.
Yeah.
And I want things to be real. I just don't want for anybody to be able to say, yeah, this is contrived crap, because it's not. Nothing I ever do is contrived, you know. And so I just I want that to be really, really obvious. So, you know, that was kind of at the center of the production of the whole thing.
So, what was the first live jazz show that you saw that blew you away, or first live concert that made you think, I want to do that one day?
Ooh. Uh, it was probably, that's an interesting question. I think I think it was a little bit more gradual than that, but I don't think I ever had one where I was like, "Oh God, that's what I'm going to do." But there was definitely some. I can think of some where I was like, "Oh man, this is really, I'm feeling something," you know. And then another thing is like, "Oh, now I'm really," you know. So, um, Marion McPartland probably. Um, my mother, she was a family friend. Marion McPartland was a family friend, and she used to come to Bowling Green, Ohio, and do residencies at Bowling Green State University, where my mom and dad taught. And she would come to our house frequently, and my mom would cook dinner, and we'd hang out, and we'd play the piano, and yada yada. I was a little kid; I was like 8, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember going to that concert and seeing her, and I remember the bass player was Steve Laspina. He was a great bass player, um, and he and I think I remember being really intrigued by it, and then I remember my brother explaining to me how it is that upright bass players play in tune, you know, with no frets. And I was like, and I just remember at that point saying, I'm not going to do that because I didn't think I'd be able to. And then whatever, and then it came around. So I remember that was very formative. And then after I had started playing a little bit, I remember going to this little club in Toledo, Ohio called Rusty's Jazz Cafe, where I went a lot. And I used to play there when I was a kid, like 15. I would play late into the, you know, way too late into the night on a school night. Um, and I remember seeing the bass player Tom Warrington, who was from Toledo and ultimately moved to LA, I think, and he played in Buddy Rich's band for a while. I think he was at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, and now I think he might be in like Patitucci said maybe New Zealand. He might be in New Zealand now.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is that I remember seeing him playing upright bass and playing these beautiful, gorgeous melodic solos up in thumb position. And I just remember being like, whoa, man, that is so cool. The melodic aspect of it was so hip. That was a real big inspiration for me too at that point. So I guess those are both pretty early experiences that definitely set me in a direction, you know, solidly.
The one thing about getting older is there's something to be said about longevity. What is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day?
Hmm. Oh gosh. Well, if it's music that's getting me up in the first place, so sometimes it's not. Sometimes, you know, I'm a very family oriented person, and my family is on my mind a lot. So a lot of times when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about what I need to do for my wife or for my daughter, you know. But um, I musically, I think it's just I kind of wake up with the thought of what can I do? Well, I've got, you know, I've got, you know, I feel like I've got some raw materials here now, and more than I did, and some raw abilities more than I did, and so like, what can I come up with today? I'm just real sort of always asking myself that, like, what cool thing can I do, or what can I do to that mix that I'm working on, or I'm just kind of usually excited for opportunities to try stuff. Uh, So that's, yeah, that, which is actually a nice place to live in because, you know, that's the opposite of being jaded, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's pretty much, I'd say that pretty much is that. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Mike, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you in an educational sense, everyone around you on the bandstand, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I have no idea. That's actually a really good question.
Yeah.
Um, um, if I'm being honest and hopefully not committing career suicide, recently I have had a number of experiences where I've heard people say things about me that were really wonderful and really, really difficult to believe, honestly, like really. Um, and so I don't know because again, I think part of being a no BS person is just being like, if someone comes up and says, "Oh my God, that was incredible. That was this, that was the other." I'm just like, I don't know. I just picked up my bass and that's what came out, and
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about the years and years and years and hours and hours and hours of practice that got me there. You know what I mean? And I'm not discounting that I worked hard, but for me, I almost try, I almost try to, with music, get to a place where it feels so nonchalant that because to me that I equate that with being natural, with just being honest. Just like I'm not really trying a lot of times. I'm just doing what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't, and sometimes I'm trying, but I'm just saying that, the kind of the ideal situation is like, yeah, it just, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't really see myself, and honestly, don't see myself much differently on the bandstand than in the grocery store. I just, I don't know. I just don't think I'm that special. And and I think in some ways I am special, and I know I'm special to some people, and da 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 da, and all that. I mean, I'm realistic, but just, I don't know. No, I don't know who I am. But I try to just deal with people for who they are, and
Yeah.
just look them in the eye and deal with them as human beings, and assume that they have insecurities like I do, and assume that they have opinions and that they have strengths and weaknesses, and try to just work with all of that the way I would with anybody.
Yeah.
Um, on the bandstand, I like to be the guy who's not. I like to be scuffling. I like to be, I like to have people telling me that I need to be doing something that I'm not doing. And that, in some senses, is difficult because there's, some aspects of music I have a higher level of mastery with than others, and so it's one of the reasons I really sometimes enjoy playing Latin music, because I don't really understand that language as well. I understand it, I mean, I understand it sort of, but I don't really understand it. And so I love being on stage, like when I'm with like Al Di Meola, because the drummer and the percussionist who were on that band, drummer Luis, uh, I always want to say Luis, but apparently it's Louis. But I don't know. He said he didn't care. But Luis Alicea and Gumbi Ortiz is the percussionist, and Gumbi's a good friend, and these guys, it's great to be on stage with them because, I'm like, I'm not sure that what I'm doing is right. I'm not really sure. I'm playing with a lot of intent, and I'm playing what I know is strong and what I know is functional, but I'm not always certain. Well, I know that it doesn't have all of the nuance of the dialect the way that they understand it, so it's a great challenge for me, and I love. Um, I like being thrown into situations where I'm where I have to just sort of do mind over matter.
Yeah.
It's a fun challenge for me.
So if anybody wants to get a copy of the parts you keep, any of your previous work, catch you live, any of the good business, where do they go?
Well, as far as the live shows, those are typically advertised on my social media, Instagram, the Pontiff. That's just ThePontif, and or at my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Mike Pope, Michael Pope, or Mike Pope, my fan page. I put stuff up on there. And also my website is languishing a bit, but I'm trying to get it back into current. So stuff should be there as far as live gigs. As far as the records, the parts you keep, I mean, you can buy it from Origin Records if you want, if you want a physical copy. And my daughter did the artwork on the cover, which is really beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah.
I love that physical CD thing, and some people still do. Anyway, so yeah, but I mean, you can buy the physical copies there. I'm not sure where all you can get physical copies, but I know that you can order them from them, and you can probably order them from Amazon, but I know you can stream it on everything.
Sure.
You can stream it on Apple Music and Spotify, and I'm pretty sure Amazon, YouTube, Music, and I mean all of the above. It's everywhere at this point.
Right on. Well, I will put links in the show notes. Mike, so great to catch up with you. Thank you for talking about your career and the album. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. Much appreciated, man.
Yes, sir.